And here we are again. With the release of Alien Romulus in August, I decided to do this series of videos to talk about the original chronology of the Alien franchise, starting by the fourth movie, Alien Resurrection, going down until the original movie from 1979, because I decided to talk about each movie in a sequence of from the worst to the best, at least in my opinion. But here we reach a breaking point for me, because even though I consider the original Alien from 1979 the best movie in the franchise, my favorite is of course its sequel Aliens from 1986, directed by James Cameron. So there you go, Aliens. What else can we talk about this movie that nobody has ever talked before? Well, I can start by saying what was my feeling when I watched this series for the first time. Well, watching the first Alien was like unlocking a dark and secret thing that you were not supposed to see when you were a kid. It's literally the experience of seeing something alien. A puzzle box that keeps opening itself and revealing new, strange secrets. Something you've never seen before. It's almost like making a dive into the dark corners of space and its hidden horrors. But then, the second Aliens is basically like, okay, now this is an evolution of the whole thing. The world and the universe has just expanded itself, bringing us a new color, a new mythology, a new version of this universe that is much more accessible in a way, but at the same time very respectful and keeping its essential elements. It's just a fun, big, long ride that takes you into a different part of that universe that you didn't know, and now you want to know more and more. It's just very exciting. At least until we had Alien 3. And I think that what most fascinated me about Aliens from the first time I watched it until today, like I said, watching the first Alien is really like an alien experience. Everything is distant and kind of far away. Isolation and silence is the focus of that original movie. But here what I thought James Cameron did very well is to open up this universe a little more and brings us more close to its main characters. First of all, the whole idea of taking us into a ride from a different point of view in terms of characters, because in the first one we had the space truckers and now we have the Marines, was a very interesting and right take on the material, because you can see that James Cameron had this idea already planted in his mind that he would like to see how the military would be in the future. So he could have implanted this idea into any science fiction movie that he would have created at the time, but he decided to put in this one when he got the chance to write the second Aliens, and it is a perfect match in contrast to the first one. In the first one we had the discovery of the creature. What is this thing? So maybe now one of the only original things you can do with it is to shoot it, explode it, put a bunch of them together and kick their ass, or the otherwise. Anyway, the take of combat the creature alien instead of running away from it was probably the best and fresher take he could have to evolve this franchise. Not only from the point of view of the soldiers, but from the center of the story, that is Ellen Ripley. As it is very well known from most people, this is probably one of the best evolutions of character in histories of franchises. Because the story of Aliens takes place 57 years after the first one, when Ellen Ripley is finally found in the Narcissus module after she successfully escaped from the creature alien and blew it out of the airlock, just to discover a world where companies control even more the human spread across galaxies and planets. And with these companies being even more ruthless in terms of preserving their own agendas, her report of what happened in LV-426, the planet of the first movie, is completely ignored. Not only that, but she also discovers that by spending all this time in space, she ended up losing her only daughter that 57 years ago was only 11 years old, Amanda Ripley. And for those who know the Alien Isolation game, knows very well who she is. But the icing on the cake is the fact that Ripley now has these terrible nightmares with the creature alien from the trauma of the first movie, which creates a great starting point for her character in this sequel. Because like I said, the theme of this movie is let's combat the alien. Let's fight our fears. Let's and our traumas. So when things go to hell in Hadley's Hope, a new colony of humans that was implemented in LV-426. By the way, who the hell would want to live in a planet like this? But okay. This whole thing gives her the momentum to finally face her own fears and put an end to this monster that haunts her so much. And this is the thing that brings us closer to this character, because I will mention this in my analysis of the first movie, but the characters in the first movie, even though they're very human and very natural to the idea of space truckers, they're not very relatable in my opinion. I mean, you can't really identify yourself with any of them if you think about it. But here, Ripley is given colors. She's not the brave but at the same time lucky survivor of the first movie. Now she's brought to the forefront of what is a real character that we get to know better and know who she really is. And this is why we have the great second theme of the whole story, that is a story of mothers. Not only with Ripley finding a new daughter in the character of Newt, the only survivor of Hadley's Hope, but at the same time with the alien queen, that is our great villain of the movie and also the mother of this whole race of xenomorphs. So this is already a great evolution of the themes in this franchise, but also all the things that surround this idea comes in play when we talk about evolution, especially the design of this new world regarding the Marines, especially the vehicles that I love with passion. Let's talk about the APC, which is this huge, beautiful tank that for a boy of 13 years old watching this movie for the first time, this thing blew my mind when I watched it moving across the rocks of LV-426, coming from the belly of a ship and carrying the soldiers. It was just like, oh my god, this is too awesome. Not only that, but the cannon above the vehicle that and goes to the back of it once the tank has to pass through a narrow or low entrance. It just made me want one of these as a toy in the Christmas or something. It's just amazing. The dropship is also fantastic. It has these arms that open up and show all these missiles in it. And even though the visual effects of the dropship coming to the planet didn't age very well, it still was very cool to see how it opened up these two arms filled with missiles. And also is a little sad that we never saw this ship using the missiles or shooting them in some area. It would be very cool to see that. And we cannot forget about the Sulaco ship that transports the Marines to the atmosphere of LV-426. That by design, it looks like a huge gun, right? A Marine gun. And obviously this is made on purpose to hammer this idea in our minds that the soldiers in this movie are all about guns, guns, and guns. And speaking about guns, their weapons are so awesome as well. The smart guns that has this arm attached to their vests is just fantastic. And of course the Marines' armor with their helmets with cameras and all the apparatus that makes it very high-tech, but at the same time it maintains this rough and old classic look of contemporary military equipment. Is very well put together in terms of design to show what these characters are about. Of course, we cannot forget about the pulse rifle that is the main weapon of some of these characters and the main weapon of the character Ripley in the end. It's so fucking cool that it's this multifunctional weapon that is a blend of machine gun with flamethrower and grenade launcher. I think any soldier in any era would love to have a gun like this in combat. So I know that the first Alien is probably one of those movies that is a breakthrough in terms of design with this rustic machinery and technology, but we cannot underestimate the design of aliens. And I truly believe that especially here in this movie, these elements like the guns and ships became even more memorable than the elements of the first movie. At least many of the fans remember the pulse rifle, the APC, the Sulaco, and of course, the power loader. One of the coolest pieces of machinery ever invented for a movie, in my opinion, and used in the most genius way by a movie, that is to fight the alien queen, in what I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think many people can agree with me, the best action or at least fight scene to be put on a sci-fi movie ever. If not the best, for sure is one of the most memorable ones. And I absolutely love the way the power loader is introduced in the movie. Way early in the movie, and it's kind of forgotten during the whole length of the story because we see Ripley using it once just to move some boxes. And of course, it is planted that this is probably that something will return in some time during the story. But the whole film is such a roller coaster ride that by the end of it, you probably don't remember any more of the power loader. So when it finally makes this triumphant return to be used in this extreme situation that requires a kind of armor to fight the alien queen, it's just brilliant. Brilliant and exciting in every way. And let's talk a little about the characters now, because like I said, Alien is the movie that brings these very routine, normal characters that are quite believable, and Aliens is arguably the one that brings more caricature characters to the franchise. But of course, all of this is done by design because the caricature characters are the soldiers that need to be egocentric, rude, boasting about their weapons, their abilities, how they can kill anything, just to get their asses kicked, pal, like Hudson says. And of course, Bill Paxton, the great late Bill Paxton, that I love very much, is the main example of these egomaniacs that the soldiers are. But brilliantly cast by James Cameron, Bill Paxton is so good that he is able to transform this guy into a lovable asshole. So he's not just an asshole, he has these lines and layers of character because sometimes in the movie he is this whiny coward that wants to run away by any means, but at the same time when he is needed and he needs to step up to the game, he does it as well. So even though he is portrayed as this caricature level of character, at the same time, I see him as a very human, or at least having very human reactions too. And by the way, I think Aliens is a great example of a movie that has this ensemble cast with many characters, but gives these layers, or at least these little human touches to each of them, except for the very minor ones, of course, but most of them individually has this very specific characteristic, and their relations is something that is also very interestingly developed. We have this little implied romance between the characters of Private Vasquez and Drake. Speaking about Vasquez, I also love her relationship with Hudson as well, once they become one of the survivors of the group. Bees, man, bees have hives. You know what I mean, if you remember those lines. And also in the Vasquez territory, she has this great rivalry with Gorman, the lieutenant of the team, and also a very coward and unexperienced leader. But even though he's a kind of an asshole, during the movie he ends up showing great signs of courage, and that at the end he has a good heart and knows what to do when the right time comes. So this is exactly what I'm saying, that these small characters all have their times and moments to shine and are very well developed individually in their little arcs. And speaking about arcs, my favorite arc in the movie comes from Bishop and the rivalry trio of him, Ripley, and Burke. Because Ripley is really hard in her prejudice against synthetics, of course, because of the trauma that she had in the first movie. But this is one of the elements that makes us dislike her a little bit in the beginning of the movie, because she's just too harsh with Bishop right away. But even so, this is a very important element that James Cameron plays with the expectations of the audience for the whole movie, because the character Burke, our disgraceful corporate guy, is introduced to us as himself saying that he's a cool guy, which means that it makes us think that he will probably be a good guy during the movie. And the casting of the actor Paul Reiser plays exactly with that point, that he looks very harmless, even naive to a certain degree. And Bishop, on the other hand, is a little creepy and a little dark. Also, I believe his introduction in the movie, using his hands and Hudson's hands to play with knives, is also introduced as an element of distrust that makes us a little suspicious about this character and what he can do. So the inversion of roles between these two characters, who is the good one and the bad one, is very welcomed and very well done. And of course, we cannot forget to mention the family of the group, that is Ripley, Newt, and Hicks. And this is an element that can make some fans of Alien kind of dislike this movie, I guess, because it's a little too lovely and cute, the whole relationship between these characters, but I don't see like that. I think James Cameron pulls the strings very delicately and with its due time to really show the growing affection between the three, especially between Ripley and Newt, which is the main relationship of the movie. And I know the main idea is to show Ripley regaining a daughter in her life, but I also think the element of the child is what creates the great breaking point between this movie and the first one in terms of character narrative. Because in the first movie, Ripley, or at least by the end of that movie, we see her as this character that has to escape from the alien, and she is the main victim. She is the one who has to run away and save her own life. And this is very smartly done in terms of character in Aliens, because now she is not the main focus of the narrative in terms of who needs to be saved. Now she has to protect another character, which is exactly what evolves her as a person, turning her from the victim to the attacker now, or at least the fighter. So all these elements form a great, wonderful, delicious dish that just moves on the whole mythology into a new territory, but at the same time being very respectful and loyal to what came first. Because I truly believe there are moments in this movie that are really faithful to the suspense of Alien and the shock of some scenes. Of course, they will never reach the shock that Alien had because it was where we saw the creature for the first time. But this was never the point of James Cameron. He knew he couldn't count on surprising and shocking the audiences again because they already know the creature, but he could evolve the whole thing and keep some of the suspenseful elements, paying very attention to not contradict any of the things that were established by the lore of Alien, the original one, especially in regards to the derelict ship in LV-46, the natural evolution of the creature Alien, and some of the details that were mentioned in the first movie, like you couldn't remove a face hugger from the face of Kane in the first movie because you could kill him, and here it is shown that the people in the colony tried to remove the face hugger of one of its inhabitants and ended up killing him. So these little details and care really solidify the whole evolution of one movie to the other. And this is what really frustrates me about what came after this movie, because when I did my analysis about Alien 3, I talked about the fact that I do appreciate some things about that movie, but in general I have a huge distaste for it because it really ignores and disrespects the foundation or the elements that were established before. And since I'm talking about aliens now, I wouldn't want to remember Alien 3 in this analysis, but I'm gonna take another shot at it, just for fun. The people who wrote Alien 3 are so ignorant that they didn't even take into consideration the fact that they could have continued the saga without the whole plot of we need to get the alien inside the Ripley. Besides forcing an egg in the Sulaco ship in the beginning of that movie that nobody knows where it came from, the company never needed Ripley in the first place. So the plot of Alien 3, the whole thing is just useless. And please don't give me the whole theory shenanigans that Bishop was the one that secretly put the egg in the Sulaco during the events of Aliens so that it would be there on Alien 3. Please don't give me that. Because after the nuclear explosion of Hadley's Hope here in Aliens, even though that caused a lot of destruction, the derelict ship from the first movie in the planet is still there, and it could very well be explored by the company after the events of Aliens. There are still thousands of eggs inside the derelict, and they could very well just gone there after the whole thing that happened in Aliens and took those eggs for themselves. And I believe that after what happened in Aliens, the company wouldn't waste any time in doing this. And this is so true that the cancelled sequel that Neil Blomkamp was planning for Aliens that would exclude Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection from the chronology to continue the saga from Aliens would have its plot revolving around this idea, with the derelict in LV-426 being taken from the planet to be studied, analyzed, and explored by the scientists. So there you go, somebody finally thought about the logic of the mythology instead of just doing another movie for money. Now, I don't know if Neil Blomkamp's movie would be good or not. I believe it wouldn't because after some movies that he directed, I'm not sure he would do a great job with Alien as well, but I don't know. I do love District 9, I think it's a hell of a movie, but anyway, the others were not so good. But that cancelled project showed that if you think a little bit and try to play with the right elements to continue the story, it could be done. Respect, man. Just respect what came before. Forget about killing Hicks and Newt. That also pissed me off, but at least have some respect and logical thinking about how you should continue a series. Now, going back to Aliens, everything in the movie is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect movie, and even though this comes close to be one, I still think there are some elements that are a little strange in the script. For example, it's very convenient for the story that the whole place, the whole colony of Hadley's Hope is very close to a nuclear reactor that will explode in 4 hours, making the characters having a countdown to escape the place. Of course, it's very good to the dynamic of the script and to make things more tense. And even though it's an element that is established before when Ripley reminds Gorman that the whole thing could explode if the soldiers use their weapons, so it's not exactly a plot hole, I still think it's a little forced because it feels like James Cameron was writing the script and he thought, I need to create something to make a countdown in this story. I cannot just put these characters waiting for 17 days to be rescued and create the whole story with their waiting and being attacked by the aliens. I need things to move quickly right now. So it's a little detail that bugs me a little, and if you guys disagree with me, you can put your comments below and your arguments of why do you think it works. I also think it's kind of strange that Ripley is the first one to remember that they are on a nuclear reactor, and if the soldiers use their weapons, the whole thing could explode. I mean, Burke is the guy that is the whole, oh my god, we need to protect this installation because it cost millions of dollars, and he didn't remember that? Or none of the characters, the soldiers, were briefed about this possibility before the mission? It seems very awkward to me, but I don't know. It also feels a little bit in the air how the whole dynamic of contamination happens in the colony. We know that the first one to be face-hugged was the father of Newt, of course, okay. But who born first? The alien queen who laid some more eggs to contaminate the other colonists? Or just the drones, I mean the xenomorphs themselves started to spread on the base until an alien queen was born to lay more eggs? Because if this happens, there would be necessary more eggs in the base to face-hug the other people. But who brought those eggs? The colonists themselves? It doesn't feel very practical for them to do that. So it feels a little in the air, this plot point. But anyway, these are just nitpicks because even the whole nuclear facility plot point leads to one of the most funny scenes in the movie where Gorman is forced to ask the captain to take everybody's ammo, ask the soldiers not to use any fire in the under levels of the colony. And of course we have great lines like Hudson saying, "Is it fucking crazy?" Or Rico going, "What are we supposed to use against them? Harsh language?" But my favorite shot is of Vasquez's face, listening to the order, because for her this is like the ultimate insult, especially from someone like Gorman that she hates. So her reaction and the performance of Janet Goldstein is just fantastic, like, motherfucker, you can give whatever order you want, but not taking my fucking ammo. And that takes us to the great scene where she charges her weapon anyway and goes, "Let's rock!" And by the way, what a great sound design for the weapons in this movie, huh? Those machine guns firing are just awesome if you have a great sound system in your house. See, this is the thing with Aliens. I cannot talk about the movie without remembering a new detail, one on top of the other, of things that I love about this movie. I didn't even talk about one of my favorite things in it, that is the alien queen, and how beautiful I think she is in terms of design and menace in her look. It's extremely faithful and respectful with the whole biomechanical idea of the creature that came from Geiger in the first movie, or from his designs. Plus, it really looks like an evolution of the xenomorph. And her introduction is just masterful because it was implied in the movie that there could be a creature like her in the whole scene of the bees and ants that Hudson talks earlier. But we would never really guess that there was actually a creature like that, a big alien that would eventually show up in the end of the movie. So when Ripley stumbles into the alien queen in the hive when she's rescuing Newt, it's just one of my favorite moments of the movie. That silence and tension and the slowly reveal of the creature in the darkness. Oh, it's so beautiful, so great. It makes everybody in the audience go, oh yes, there it is. Fantastic, fantastic. And this is a point that I think we have to mention in regards of James Cameron. He did this twice in his career. He created a sequel that takes the elements of the first one to a new level, and after that, it becomes just too hard to continue and evolve the franchise in a way that feels organic and honest to what came before. For example, here we have the Alien Queen. So after the Alien Queen, what can you do? A bigger alien? Or an alien dog? I mean, you could do it and can be good, but at the same time it feels like, let's force a new idea because we must have one. The same happens with T2, the Terminator 2. The T-1000 is just another level of Terminator that is almost impossible to defeat. So after a liquid metal Terminator, what can you create? A gas Terminator? Or all the versions that showed up in the sequels to that movie that looked all like a downgrade from the T-1000? See, this is a problem. But of course, then many years later, he did Avatar 2 that, in my opinion, is just a crappy sequel and doesn't involve the franchise in any way. But we cannot ignore his previous achievements because I do believe when you do something like that, it is a big achievement. You really knocked the ball out of the park in terms of exploring what ideas this universe allow you to explore. And if you didn't guess until now, I am a suspect to say all of these good things that I said about this movie because it definitely is my favorite movie of my life. And every time I watch it, and I did watch recently to make this video, it always confirms to me that it still is my favorite movie of all time. Extremely tied with The Exorcist, of course, but it still is my favorite one. So I hope I could explore all the things and elements that I love about this movie in a way that was entertaining for you. I will continue this series in talking about the first Alien. So we just have one to go, and I will do it in the next month, very close to the release of Alien Romulus, which we are all praying to be at least a respectful sequel to the franchise. Alright? Thank you so much if you watch it until now. If you are liking the content of Trashing with Gus, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like in this video so we can continue to trash together in the future. Alright? See you in the next trashing video and bye bye.